Dirty Birds, what's up and welcome back. I am your host, Will McFadden. I am joined by Tori McElhaney and Terrin Waack, and we are here to discuss the Falcons' initial roster, which dropped on Tuesday afternoon. The NFL teams had to cut their rosters down to 53 men by Tuesday at 4 p.m. The Falcons got down to 52. We're not going to go through the whole thing as it stands right now. If you'd like to see the whole thing before listening to this podcast, just press pause for one quick second and dash on over to AtlantaFalcons.com, where we have the full 53-man roster for you and excellent coverage from all of training camp that you can check out while you're there. But really quickly, we will go through just some of our biggest surprises, some of the players we're glad that made it, some of the position groups we feel that have changed the most, and then tomorrow the practice squad will be announced. So we're not going to really touch on any of the practice squad stuff because we don't know it at this point in time. But before we get into the roster, there's a little bit of offensive line news that happened on Tuesday that we're going to start off with. So Terrin, kicking it on over to you.
At the same time, the 53 or 52-man, in this case, roster was announced. Caleb McGarry, the Falcons' starting right tackle, was placed on injured reserve without the designation to return. So that means he is out for this season. He injured his left leg in the Falcons' final practice of training camp last Wednesday. And then on Friday, after the Falcons' preseason loss to the Cowboys, Falcons head coach Raheem Morris said McGarry will miss significant time. And we now know how significant, and it is very significant. And then on top of that news, on what day is today? Tuesday. Woo! A report surfaced that the Falcons are making a trade with the Seattle Seahawks for offensive lineman
Michael Jarrell.
And
is it Jarrell or Jarrell?
I don't know. We'll have to ask him.
We're going to find out. We're going to report back.
He's here.
Report back once it becomes an official trade.
Yeah. So those are the two newsy bits when it comes to the offensive line, along with something we'll get into later, but I'll leave that for later.
Yeah, Tori, I was watching a little bit of film on the Seattle offensive linemen, just preparing. But I think we can probably table that for a later time, and we'll kind of see what he brings to this team. Right now, let's talk a little bit more about Caleb McGarry. We know that he's done for the year. That was kind of the missing piece in all of this. We knew he was injured. We just didn't know what the severity was going to be. Now that we do, you said last time you were concerned.
Yeah. I still am.
Yeah.
I still am concerned, and I think that this is one of those things where we're recording this at like 5 o'clock on Tuesday. It wouldn't surprise me at all by 5 o'clock on Wednesday that the Falcons have made a move, have turned over a new leaf at right tackle, whether it be, I think the reported trade of Michael Jarrell is more along the lines of like reinforcing depth at the position than I do. I don't believe this is somebody who's going to come in and be a starter. I think this is someone who's going to come in and compete for like a swing tackle role on this roster. I do not think that the Falcons are done looking at what's available at the tackle position. There are a lot of offensive tackles that have starting experience on other rosters that actually fell off of other 53-man rosters that I think could come in and if anything, compete for a starting spot. And so I think even though, yes, we can right now in this moment at 5:10 p.m. on Tuesday say, okay, Elijah Wilkinson, I'm slotting him in if I'm looking at a depth chart right now with the initial 52-man roster that we have available to us. It's like, okay, it's Elijah Wilkinson. I don't know if that's who we're going to be penciling in 24 hours from now. I don't know if that's going to be who we're penciling in for week one. Like, I think this is a very fluid situation, and the fact that the only thing that's not fluid now is we do know Caleb McGarry will be out for the entire season. So you've got to figure out that right tackle spot and the ramifications of it also across the line and what happens with the whole group as a whole. Because as we know, running the ball down the right side behind Caleb McGarry and Chris Lindstrom is something that the Falcons found uber success doing last season. How that changes and how that affects potentially even Zach Robinson play calling will be something to monitor.
It sure brought a smile to my face every time I saw it on Sunday. Seeing those two guys leading the way for Bijan or Tyler, I'm just going to miss it. I'm going to miss it. But I hope everybody heard what you said. It's going to be a fluid situation. That's fully what I would expect because they're doing their due diligence as they always do. But this time, like, there's a real mission, I think, involved in scouring all of the cut lists to figure out who is available, can they help our team, and can they do so quickly. Because I was looking at kind of Lance Erline for NFL.com does a lot of the draft profile. So I, again, just wanted to get a real quick idea on the reported signing of Michael Jarrell. And this little bullet point stood out to me. Traits could lead to rapid growth with pro coaching and development. Now, he's been in the league for 1 year. I did see a little bit of growth, but Dwayne Ledford, the offensive line coach here, is very highly thought of within the building and around the league. And so I'm curious to see what he could do, but I agree. I think that's going to be a depth move ultimately. Yeah. So fluid situation, as you said, keep an eye on that. But now we are going to go ahead and transition to talk about some of the cuts that were made, some of the position groups that were left. And we're going to start with our Vibe Shift Award. And this is the position group that is the most different from last year. I think it's very clear that the edge group, based on the draft picks and the rookies coming in, and just really the demeanor of the group itself. We saw kind of the tenacity that they played with, starting a couple fights, a little bit of that. So I think edge is very clearly the answer for a lot of people here. We don't need to spend much more time on that. But Terrin, I'm really curious, who did you have? What position group do you think had the biggest vibe shifts?
See, I think I went with the most obvious, quarterback. You have a completely different starting quarterback this year. I mean, the same quarterbacks are in the room.
Right, I was about to say, it's like...
So
it's a 100% change, though, in the starter.
Is,
so, I mean,
right?
the edge group, I don't know if it's a 100%
100%
change.
different.
Yeah.
So last year, obviously, Kirk Cousins was the starting quarterback, and Michael Penix Jr. was his backup. 180, I think. But now, Michael Penix Jr. is the starter, and Kirk Cousins is the backup. So, enough said. It's different. It's just 1-2 different.
Always get the 180-360 thing wrong, so I'm kind of glad to see you do that, because I always am like, oh yeah, it was a full 360, and they're like,
and you're like
so we just kept on going right in the same direction. Will, yeah.
I was thinking of the cha-cha slide.
Take it back now, y'all. Tori, what was the vibe shift for you?
So the vibe shift for me was the defensive line, interior defensive line, to go along with the same vibes of the edge rusher group. I think that this is a young group outside of David Onyemata. I mean, for how long? For 10 years, an entire decade, Grady Jarrett has been the core of the interior defensive line for the Atlanta Falcons. He is no longer on a 53-man roster here in Atlanta. And it does feel like there is this ushering in of the next guard, the new guard. And that includes Ruka Roro. It includes Zach Harrison and Brandon Dorless. And yes, David Onyemata is still here. And Laquelle London, I know we're going to talk about him later, making the 53-man roster. I think that for the scope of how much different it could look, that group and along with the edge rusher, the entire defensive line could look and feel very different week one. I already feel like through the first 3 preseason games, it did look and feel different. The way that they were playing, how they were rotating, all of those things, the bodies that they have, the youth that they have, I think all manifests in this entire defensive front feeling different.
So you brought up Grady Jarrett no longer being here, which, like, honestly, it's crazy to think about that. Who among this group, and there's probably not an answer in year one because it took Grady a decade to ingratiate himself the way that he did, but who do you think has the best chance to kind of end the year with that Grady type of fan favorite label amongst this group of maybe interior defensive linemen?
I do think it's Rook.
You think so? Okay.
I think it's Rook. I think he is the one that you drafted to come in here with kind of the understanding that, hey, Grady Jarrett is not going to be around this roster forever, whether it happened the way it happened or if he retired here in Atlanta. You know, like there was always he was in the twilight years of his career.
Yeah, you got to pass the torch sometime.
You have to figure out a succession plan. And I think, what we've seen from Rook really taking ownership of, like, not trying to be Grady Jarrett because he can't be Grady Jarrett, but understanding that his time is now and his time has come. I think him and, you know, the kind of pairing of Brandon Dorless, I think Brandon Dorless had a great camp.
He had an amazing camp.
I think he had one of the best camps of, you know, anybody on this roster.
Professional camper, that man there.
Yes, and so I think, like, but to me, it's Rook. The investment you made into Rook, and also understanding, I also think, like, just from a fan's perspective, the personality of Rook, and you know, he's a Clemson grad. Like, this is a guy who, I mean, he's been on this podcast. He has an infectious personality. He is really fun to interview. I think in terms of who the fan base could gravitate towards if they really get going, it's in that group, it's Rook.
Rook would take it as an honor, too. I remember when he got drafted, he was so looking forward to learning from Grady Jarrett that if he could be in some way, shape, or form Grady Jarrett 2.0, that boy will always have a smile on his face.
Let's pivot to our next topic. Who's the bubble guy, Terrin, that you are really excited to see on this roster?
This player brought a smile to my face seeing him on the initial 52-man roster, and that is offensive lineman Jack Nelson, partially because I was in Madison 2 weeks ago and went to the bar that he got drafted in.
There you go.
So there's a tie there. But I just think you see how Dwayne Ledford has built his offensive linemen from like the ground up essentially, and how many offensive linemen in the Falcons system who were drafted here and built from the ground up and had such long careers that I would love for a young guy like Jack Nelson to learn from these veterans like Jake Matthews, like Chris Lindstrom, and even Ryan Newsel, who had a completely different career path than the other two, and just absorb that and maybe be a really good future depth or starting option down the line.
Yeah, it's a great pick, and I think a lot of people were, myself included, kind of tough on Jack Nelson during training camp in the preseason. But like Raheem has said it many times, he got so many reps this preseason, and he got them on both sides. And switching sides like that is not easy for a young player, for a veteran even. And so I do think it is. I'm really curious to see how his development throughout the year progresses. Tori, what about you?
So my bubble player, which I think you could probably argue if he was a bubble player or not, but was D'Angelo Malone. I thoroughly appreciated how much he was kind of doing whatever he needed to do to make this roster, adding value wherever he could to make this roster. And I always think that stuff should be rewarded, like doing the dirty work on special teams, playing multiple positions, doing anything and everything that is asked of you, and honestly, doing it pretty well. I thought he had some moments where he flashed in some preseason games, even understanding that particularly inside linebacker was a position that was very new to him. I really liked that if you're talking about just like 53-man decisions and initial roster decisions, someone who did everything that was asked of them and earned a spot on the 53-man or on the initial roster, that to me matters to also other people that are kind of watching what decisions are made either in Atlanta or if you're on a practice squad or anything like that. Like that if you do the right things and if you do what you're asked, that there is something good for you at the end of it.
You just want to build on the barnyard bully.
I do. Well, I love that tagline. I love that Raheem called him the barnyard bully of special teams. I really do.
Well, and he built on special team, right? Like he came in with that floor of special team starter, and then he built on top of it. And we saw late last year some of the skills that they felt they could use. That Raiders game kind of stands out, and coming off the edge, but maybe even being some of that backup for Caden, knowing the pass rush skills that he brings. If you want to move into the A gap, I think that works too. Sitting on the defense side of the ball, LaCale London, a player who's been here for the past few years and kind of shines every time he's in there, and I just love to watch him. He made maybe my favorite play of the preseason,
Amazing.
Which was in Dallas. I watched him. I don't know why he caught my eye, but I just saw him from the sideline running in late to the game because he just, I guess, wasn't in there. And the ball is snapped as he's still running, and they just kind of run up the middle, and he just runs right into the ball carrier and makes the tackle for like a 1-yard gain. It was amazing.
It was the funniest play of the preseason.
It was so good.
It was the best play of the preseason, and honestly, like maybe you should try that more often.
I like to think he ran his way into the roster.
I mean,
just
in that
on
moment,
that play.
yeah, Raheem is just like going back and forth, like, guys, this is what you need to do in order to make the 52.
He was like, that's all hustle.
Yeah, that's
right there.
hustle.
That's what we need, is showing clips on the next day.
Heart, mind, fist.
Everyone lines up along
all
the
on
sideline
one play.
from
Well,
here
maybe not the mind part, but the heart and the fist
I
were
think
there.
the mind, like maybe he was the one that was like, oh, I need to get out there.
It's true. Maybe somebody else was, and he was like,
And he
"There's
was
only
like, there's
10."
only
He's
10.
doing some rapid
Yeah.
math. Love it.
We don't know.
All right, let's get to who the most surprising cut was. Terrin, who was your most surprising cut?
Ooh, that threw me for a loop because I'm last on the list.
We go on the fly here. We like to shake things up.
I went with Contavious Street, mainly because I was just so shocked by the fact the Falcons kept, five defensive linemen?
I was also shocked, yeah.
I predicted 8, which was hefty. But I just know when we were out there during training camp and Nate Ollie and Jeff Ulbrich are rotating guys along the line, in, out. Nate Ollie said 4 plays apiece. You're divvying up 4 plays among 5 guys.
The math doesn't math.
like the laptop says, the math is not mathing.
Right, yeah.
And that really surprised me. And so Kentavious Street was probably the biggest name I noticed from the guys who didn't end up making the cut. Morgan Fox initially surprised me from the cuts made last Saturday. So, yeah, it's just a much thinner group than I expected.
You also have to take in consideration that Taquan Graham is one of the players that got put on IR with the designation to return.
Yes.
Yep.
So that also, I think, limits the scope of how many you were carrying.
Yeah.
What about you, Tori?
Easton Stick.
Yeah.
I was very, very surprised when the reports came out pretty early in the day that the Falcons were releasing Easton Stick, because I thought that he had absolutely done enough to make the 53-man roster. And I have also been very adamant that, like, if Kirk Cousins is a tradable asset for you, you need to have someone in ready to go at the drop of a hat. This, to me, the fact that the Falcons were willing to send him to waivers, I think he'll be back. If he clears waivers, I do think that this is somebody who you pencil in on the practice squad, absolutely. But the fact that they are willing to take that chance, to me, signifies that everything that Raheem Morris, Terry Fontenot, all the leaders in this Falcon organization have said is true, that the Falcons are comfortable moving forward with Kirk Cousins as the backup. This right here, to me, indicates that they were willing to take a chance on Easton Stick being picked up by another team somewhere else via waivers. And they were like, we're fine. We're cool going forward with Michael Penix and Kirk Cousins. Like, to me, I think people need to, and it's so funny because this is what the Falcons have been saying since freaking January.
Finally accept it.
But I do think that people maybe need to get it through their head that Kirk Cousins is going to be on this roster for a ample amount of time, and probably we're going to be in January 2026, February 2026, and he is on this roster. So that's I'm just speculating here, but that was the indicator to me that was a big shock and a big kind of for me an understanding of where the organization finds itself.
Yeah, I do think if you look at with the two guys in the quarterback room right now, like the average skill of Michael Penix Jr. and Kirk Cousins, like they've got to have the best quarterback room in the NFL, right? Like if we're doing Madden grades and then it's like the overall grade for your quarterback position, I can't imagine another group has kind of like two guys like that. So they must have felt really good about going into the season, obviously, they said, with those two. And then, yeah, we'll see what happens with Easton. Another veteran, though, who was released and signed this offseason that I was surprised to see was Jordan Fuller. We know that they drafted Xavier Watts to come in here and ultimately, be that starter next to Jesse Bates. I just didn't know it would lead to Jordan Fuller not being on the 53-man roster, and I think that's a credit to Xavier, certainly. I think it's a credit to DeMarco Hellams. And we'll see if Jordan Fuller is a player to come back as well. He's obviously got that experience with Raheem, and he was out there a lot. So that one left me scratching my head a little bit, but I think when you look at some of the injuries that have taken place and you maybe have to make a hard decision somewhere else, maybe you felt like, all right, safety is a very solid room as well. We like all four of those guys. Maybe we like three, So that was definitely shocking to me. We're going to wrap up here with our biggest question mark. I'd saving mine for the end because I think it'll be a good little button cap for this. So, Terrin, we'll start with yours.
Oh, again, out of order. It's okay. I went with Darnell Mooney just because putting him on the 53/52 initial roster shows that maybe he is further along in his recovery from the shoulder injury than we thought, because I know it was very up in the air for a while there. Raheem Morris originally said a few weeks, and a few weeks passed, and there still wasn't an answer. And people were definitely marking their calendars week by week to what's a few. And the fact that he's not falling into any of these other designations, granted, we don't know what's going to happen in the upcoming days, I will say, that's my biggest question. Is he ready to go week one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be a huge question, and they would love to have him week one against Tampa Bay, right? Mm-hmm. That could be a shootout. Two offenses we expect a lot of fireworks from, so you'd love to have Darnell Mooney. What about you, Tori?
It's all about where the practice squad ultimately shakes out. This is a group that I think you can pencil in a lot of names. We talked about Easton Stick. We talked about Jordan Fuller, Contavious Street already. But Nick Nash, Chris Blair, I think that there are a good number of individuals that were either waived or released today that we absolutely should pencil in to see again. And I will note that don't kind of count out Lenny Krieg either, the Falcons international player. You would be able to carry him as a 17th person on the practice squad. So yeah, you have 16 spots, but also pencil in Lenny Krieg if he clears waivers. So that to me is the biggest question that remains. We'll have that answer probably around noon on Wednesday, which will be really, really great. And honestly, I was even looking back, and the way the Falcons do their practice squad elevations and designations, there's a very, very good possibility that we will see a lot of these practice squad guys on the active game day roster with elevations. The Falcons have, and honestly playing too, they utilize those. It's not like they just bring those guys up for depth. They actually utilize them a lot on special teams. So for that reason, it's who ultimately lands on that 16, but I think it is going to be a lot of the names that you see on the waived released list of who got cut today.
Absolutely. That's a great point. They do utilize that practice squad. It's very valuable now in the NFL. So yeah, that's a great point to bring up. I'm going to end it with what we began with. The offensive line, that is easily, to me, the biggest question mark going in, but specifically who is going to start at right tackle. So I kind of want to wrap up our discussion a little bit by just making one kind of proclamation. Who do we think is going to start week 1 at right tackle? I think the options right now are Elijah Wilkinson, Jack Nelson, the reported signing of Michael Jarrell, and then a player to TBD. As you said, maybe there's another move to be made. So if you had to kind of bank on one of those right now, maybe I'll go first. Elijah Wilkinson would be my pick at this moment. Tori?
Can I pick someone who's not on the roster?
Yeah, it's player TBD.
Player TBD. I think that to play devil's advocate, I also think that it wouldn't surprise me if week 1 Elijah Wilkinson is the guy, week 2, and then maybe even after the bye week, you change something up a little bit, also depending on how Storm Norton is progressing. If you feel like you can get through maybe the bye week and have Elijah Wilkinson, handle himself at the position and wait out Storm Norton. You don't have to go out and get somebody and you feel okay with what you have. I can see that. But I'm also sitting here looking at some of, like what I said earlier, some of the offensive tackles that fell off of other rosters like the Texans and the Jets that had a lot of tackle depth. I'm absolutely kind of seeing who I could get in here to potentially move the needle, who has that starting experience at that position.
Tori's eyeing those other rosters.
I am. I'm literally.
She's greedy. She's looking out there. She's like, ooh, give me them.
I know, yeah.
What about you, Terrin?
I agree with Tori. So with that being said, I'm going to use my little segment here to circle all the way back when I said we'll talk about this later because we haven't addressed it technically yet, that Storm Norton didn't make the initial roster because he was placed on reserve/injured with the designation to return. So that means he can come back this season, unlike Caleb McGarry, but at some point he has to miss 4 games. I mean, right off the bat, not at some point. Right away.
Yes.
At least 4 games.
Yeah.
And you did have that report last week that came out that he is expected to miss 6 to 8. So that timeline is another question mark.
But according to that report, had the surgery, 6 to 8 week timeline, missed 4 weeks automatically, going on the IR designated return. So maybe post bye week, right? If best case scenario, you're maybe looking at week 6, right?
Week 5 bye has never looked so good.
It is not for right now. So that is going to do it for our initial roster discussion, 52-man roster. We'll see, when that 53rd guy manages to come on in here. But
I'm ready.
There you go, Terrin. We've seen your cornerback? What are you?
I was a linebacker.
You're a linebacker? Okay. I feel like your position every time we try to get you out there on the field, it's like kick returner, and then it's corner, and then you're the edge rusher. So I'm just trying to pin down exactly
the short burst, not the long field burst.
Exactly where you are. But that's your secret sauce. You're already pinned down. That's Wiley out there, a savvy vet.
She is.
All right. Well, we will be back with you guys next Friday before week 1 with a brand new show that is going to be new to this Atlanta Falcons Podcast Network that we are very excited to roll out for you all. But until then, take a deep breath. Go touch some grass. Go walk around out in the sunshine. It's been a long camp. It's been a long off season. The season is right around the corner. But until then, everybody, for Terrin Waack and Tori McElhaney, I am Will McFadden. We'll see you next time.